Hey everyone, so for this video we're going to be talking through breaching pods and boarding actions on enemy ships and how to use them. So it's one of the more complicated weapon systems in Fiery Void. So I'll take it through in stages of the attack itself. So we'll have the attaching a pod and delivering marines and the different things to consider there, and then we'll go through each of the three different marine missions that they can do, which is sabotage of systems or ship generally, capture ships, so you can disable them for the rest of the scenario, and also rescue missions, which might be appropriate in certain scenarios that you could be playing. All right, so we're gonna kick off just by having a quick look at breaching pods and the Marines weapon itself. So here we have some game breach pods, and the only unit in the game that actually has the Marines weapon system is breaching pods, certainly at present. So they, generally speaking, don't have any other weapons, although you do also get a thing called some factions of armed breaching pods where they get some sort of fighter weapon as well, but you usually have to pay a bit of a premium to get that. Okay, so looking at the system itself, we have certain things to pick up on. There isn't like a full text description of what they can do. As I say, it's a very complicated system and the tooltip would be as large as my screen. But I have left instructions in the details of this video and indeed on the faction list file in the Fiery Void lobby as well, so you can click through and get a link to that with all the information you should need. So looking at this, we have its range is 0.1, which effectively means its range is 0. So you have to be on the same hex as an enemy ship if you're going to attack them. You'll see a marker there of elite, which certain factions come as with elite marines as standard. Those are the game and the Narn. But other factions can pay to upgrade their marines to be elite marines. And what that essentially means is they will get, broadly speaking, a 10% bonus roll to every role involved. So whether it's delivering the Marines or conducting one of the missions on the ship, they will get that bonus. And then you'll see ammunition, which strictly speaking is how many Marine units you have. Ammunition is probably not quite the right word, but it sort of just fitted in with the structures we already had in Fiery Void. So each breaching pod effectively has 2 units of Marines as standard, and that's what the ammunition signifies. Again, you can buy an extra Marine unit for each pod in the fleet selection screen. Okay, so that's what they look like. I'm just going to do what I usually do and sort of play through the turn to get them all in position. And I've set up just a little scenario here where we've got a slow moving Primus and a rather more fast moving for Chan. So let's move all these around just to give you an example of how turn might play out. So these breaching pods are going to try their luck on the Primus and they're moving at speed 3, which will be relevant later. The Vorchan is doing a bit of a flyby, so these Marines will try and catch up and attack it from the aft. So that'll take us through to the firing round. The breaching pods count as fighter units and the weapon is a fighter weapon, so it's not like ramming. They can be shot down before they get a chance to attack. So had I wanted to, the Primus could fire all its twin arrays and probably could take out some of these attacking breaching pods if it was so inclined. For the purposes of the tutorial video, I'm not going to do that. But worth mentioning. So to attach the pods, we are going to select the firing mode that we want, and there are 3. So there's sabotage, capture ship, and rescue. And these, so essentially the firing modes correspond to whatever marine mission you want. You could have some marines do sabotage, you could have some marines do rescue. The flight doesn't all have to do the same mission. For the purpose of this one, I'm just going to actually, yeah, I think I'm going to mix it up just to be show you. One of the things I added, I can't remember if it was this patch or the last one, is but you can see in the tooltip there, we've got 4 doing sabotage, 1 doing capture ship, and 1 doing rescue. And you'll notice that they all have 100% chance to hit. And there's a very good reason for that. And that is that the breaching pod is moving faster than the Centauri Primus. And where that's the case, it will always be an automatic hit, so 100%. Unless the speed difference is so large that the thrust characteristic, so in this case 9, the maximum thrust characteristic, can't is so the speed difference is higher than that thrust number. So if the speed difference between these two units was, in this case, over 9, it would be an automatic miss. But because a speed difference is, let's see, that's going at 1, that's going at 3, speed difference is only 2, breaching pod is faster, it's an automatic hit. And your tooltip will always tell you what that is. Conversely, or in slightly different circumstances, these guys can just all sabotage. If the enemy ship is moving faster than the breaching pod, then for each point of speed difference, you get a 10% less chance to hit. And that's why it's 70, because the breaching pod here is moving at 3, the Vorchan is moving at 6, so it's 3 speed units faster. Negative 3 times 10, negative 30%, so it's a 70% chance to hit. And that is, if you're ever wondering what the chances, hit chances there are based on, that's what it is. And this is a hit chance to attach the pod only. This isn't the same chance as delivering Marines. Those are actually separate roles. And I'm just going to commit the firing orders, and you will see how you can tell if your Marines were delivered or not. So, as ever, combat log is your friend when you want to know what happened. And there's quite a lot of information in here that I'll just talk through, and then that'll be the end of this section. So we have the 70% chance to hit on the Vorchan, 4 out of 6 hit. So, you know, that's about what you would expect at that hit percentage. So 4 pods attached. You then get 4 updates, one for each pod, on how the Marines managed in their attempts to be delivered onto the ship. So you can see here we rolled a 7, and this is on a D10, and it's got a -1 modifier because the lower result, the better. So because the Narns are, sorry, the game, I should say, are have the elite characteristic, they get -1 on the rolls, and that should mean that they've got a 10% better chance of getting a good result, essentially. So rolled 7 there. Marine unit was beaten back by defenders, but managed to return safely to their pod. Now that's important because if you rolled, I think it's like 8 or 9, or 9 or 10 maybe, the Marine unit not only couldn't be delivered, but also was lost, and you wouldn't get that ammunition back to that breaching pod in that case. So didn't get on the ship, but also you retained your ammunition and you can try again in future turns. Is what happened there. We also got a couple of 1s here. The success roll for delivering is 5 or under, so it's about a 50% chance before modifiers. So we've got 2 that just successfully go aboard, and then on this one here is 7 again, so same result. If we look at the Primus results, what do we have? Okay, so they all hit, and we deal with the 4 sabotage attempts first because we did the different firing modes. So 3, again, 5 or under, they're on board. 9, eliminated by defenders for trying to board the enemy ship, so that ammunition point is lost. That's the worst result you can get. And then the other 2 managed to get on board for their sabotage. And then the capture ship one, they managed to get on board, so they're going to try and start capture. They're going to directly fight the defenders, but we'll get to that later on in the video. And then the last rescue mission, it's they'll attempt the rescue mission. So regardless of what mission you pick, the process of attaching and delivering your Marines exactly the same. So what we'll do, and then once they're on board, and we'll use the Primus one to demonstrate this one. Once they're on board, you will see them as critical effects on the CNC. The only exception being if you chose to sabotage a system, in which case you'll see that on the system. But again, we'll cover that in a second. But generally speaking, you see them on the CNC, and you can see 3 times criticals. Elite enemy marine unit is undertaking sabotage operations, so that's 3 sabotage that got on board. Elite enemy units are attempting to capture the ship, So that's to capture the ship that got on board. And lastly, elite enemy unit is conducting a rescue mission. So that's where you find out where the results. And what I'm going to do is just now change the game, and we will go and turn through other games I've set up and just see how these critical effects affect the enemy ship once they're in play. So back in a second. Okay, and we're back, and I've just we're in the firing phase of the game I'd sort of set up previously, and I just started kicking off with how to use Sabotage. I just wanted to start with like it's slightly different from Capture and Rescue in that you can do cold shots against system. This is done in exactly the normal cold shot rules. So if I do 3, which are general sabotage, and then I just pick 3, find one that's in arc. So you can see can't target the front, can't target the port because we arrived from this angle. So I think what I want to do is target the battle laser. So click on the system, do Marines target, and then I will OK that. So we've got 3 doing general sabotage, which in tabletop was known as wreak havoc, and we've got 3 that are targeted on a specific system. So I just want to look, okay, we're good. So what happened there's all 3 managed to get on board for general sabotage, and 2 of them managed to get on the weapon, which I'll just confirm in the combat log. So there you go. And you can see all 5 of them managed to get through, but only one of them, beaten back, still managed to get turned safely back. So it's pretty good rolling, but again, they've got in this case it is the Narn, and they do have that bonus, so perhaps not unexpected. Okay, I'm just going to fast forward this to the firing round and be right back. And we're back. So a couple of things to note here. One, you'll see that the pods haven't stayed on the ship. So during the movement round of turn 2, they delivered the Marines in the firing phase of turn 1, and then on turn 2, they're free to go wherever they want. They're not physically attached to the ship like they would have been in tabletop. That's just not something we can currently do in Fiery Void, so they're free to fly around. They essentially just drop the Marines in, and then they can go and do what they want. In this case, they circled back, and we're going to try and deposit some more Marines. But since it's a short video, we're not going to complicate the picture anymore. But in real life game, you would probably do that. Looking at the Primus Battlecruiser, so as mentioned, they've got 3 general sabotage and 2 weapon sabotages. What that means is they roll in different tables, still with D10, still with the same modifier for being elite Narn Marines, but the ones in the CNC, they will roll to see if they can disrupt the ship. So initiative penalties, minor damage to primary system, like 1d6 damage. They can raise defense profiles to make the ship easier to shoot. And they can affect like EW. I think they can also affect engine thrust as well. So they can do all sorts of unpleasant sabotage operations. The ones that are on the weapon, they're just placing satchel charges and they're trying to destroy whatever system that you've targeted them on. So the idea will be they either damage it or they don't. And the other thing to point out is Marines delivered on turn 1 in this case, but they won't actually conduct any operations until the following turn. So turn 2 in this instance, and they will do it automatically. There's nothing once they're on the ship and the critical effect is in place. You don't have to do anything; it will all be handled automatically. So let's see how they got on. Just confirm. All right, so back to the replay. And more so than probably any other system, it's the combat log that really tells you what's happening with these. So we got 5. And ramming attack, similar to Limpet Bore, it's just used as a useful system for Fiery Void to conduct the attack. It's not really a ramming attack, so don't worry too much about that. The real detail is in the log. So. Okay, I think we've got a good split here. A Marine unit has placed a signal emitter on target ship. Its profile to incoming fire is increased by 5 next turn. So we'll look at that in a second, but that's one of the sabotage operations. On the primary hull, marine unit sabotage engine conduits, thrust reduced by 3 next turn, unless the ship is gravitic or is an OSAT. And the OSAT exclusion is just simply because they don't have any engine, whereas gravitic ships are just, this is one of the effects that they're able to avoid as a benefit of being gravitic. Then we rolled an 8. A marine unit fails sabotage turn, but they are not eliminated, so that critical effect will remain and they'll just try again next turn. One thing about the sabotage operations, and you'll see this in the modifiers if you look at details, is the longer they are on the ship trying to sabotage, the harder it gets. So for every 2 turns that they've tried to sabotage, they will get +1 on this table that they're rolling against. And as I say, negative numbers are actually bonuses for this, positive numbers are actually penalties. So +1 every 2 turns will stack up, and eventually they'll likely be eliminated, depending on the length of the game. And then finally, what have we got? So the next 2 are the ones that were attempting to damage the battle laser, and you'll see the first one was very successful. They caused 6 damage to the battle laser, they rolled a 1, so that was the best result, and they will now continue sabotage operations on the enemy ship. So what this means is they've been successful and they haven't been eliminated, so rather than lose those marines will move to the C&C and they will become a 4th critical effect, and again we'll see that in a second. So you have 4 marine units conducting general sabotage because their target has been finished, and in fact you'll have 5 because the marine unit attempted to damage it but it was already destroyed, so they will continue sabotage operations on the enemy ship. So what we should see now that we're into turn 3 is, yep, the engines, that output was lowered, remember that. The ship defense profile is increased, that was part of our sabotage, and we have 5 marine units undertaking sabotage operations generally. So you can see that these kind of effects will stack up. I would say that was some pretty good rolling, in the sense of like no marine units were lost, that could easily happen too. But so far so good, and you can see how sabotage or the sabotage missions can really sort of start to really inconvenience your opponent, shall we say. Okay, so that is sabotage, and now we'll just sort of pause the recording. I'll move on to the game where I can showcase how capture ship works. Okay, so now let's think about capture ship missions, and I've got a game here which I've sort of prepared and ran through earlier a bit, just to show you how this can work. So we're on turn 1, and if we just play it, we can see the Narn breaching pods all congregate on the Primus, and they're all going to attempt a capture ship mission. And just show the results here. So, a few things to be aware of. Attaching 11 Marines work exactly the same as the examples given already, but there is one difference that is worthwhile here. So we've in total got a series of 24 pods, 6 times 4. Notably also some armed breaching pods, so I mentioned them earlier, and these ones actually have some for Narn, that's Narn fighter guns are pretty good, so they're worth paying attention to as well. But essentially you've got 24 pods all trying to do a capture ship mission on a single ship. And hard-coded into the tabletop rules and Fiery Void rules is you can only have a certain number of marine missions happening at the same time on a ship. So for capital ships that limit is 8, HCVs it's 4, medium ships, MCVs is 2, and LCVs is, and orbital satellites is 1. Fighters can't be boarded, and just for clarity. And all in an enormous units can get 12. So there's a hard limit to how many marine missions you can have ongoing, and the reason I mention that is so that when we look through combat log, we will see that as marine units are delivered, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we're now at a maximum, so when the other 2 groups of breaching pods try, they simply get the message, too many current marine missions on target, boarding attempt cancelled. And what that means is no marines are delivered, but also no marines are lost. You will get them back and you can attempt boardings with them in future turns. Okay, so I'm going to now advance this to the next turn, and we can see that the breaching pods just all peel off. And I just pause it there because at this stage in the proceedings we can see that there's 8, ignore the bottom one, we can see there's 8 Marines are attempting to capture this ship, and slight spoilers, they're going to eliminate 4 defenders. This ship started with 12 defenders, so each CNC when you hover over it will say Marine units, so you can see it's got 8, so 12 minus 4, and I'll show you where that minus 4 came from in a second. And you can see how many Marines are currently on board at the moment. The reason it's showing you that in advance is just because we're in replay. So I'll just keep playing. And there we are. So we can see slight advantage. And this is where you get your information on how well the capture ship is going. So each capture ship critical has 2 roles associated with it, and they're on a D100. So the first role, you get the details here, and this is the attacking Marines trying to eliminate a defender. And what they want to score is 50 or less. So in this case, you can see they got 85, even with their Narn bonus there. So it does not eliminate a defender. The defending crew then roll, and that's what the roll in the mod at the end of this message is. In this case, defending crew does not eliminate attacking Marines either. Their role is reversed. The higher the better for them. So they look to get 70 or more in order to eliminate an attacker. So if we go down, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders are eliminated, and the defending crew, nope, nope, nope. Yes, so they eliminate one of the attackers and does not eliminate the attacking Marine. So yeah, they only eliminate 1. So if we move on to turn 3, which will just be on the resume game here, we can see there's 7 attackers left because 1 was lost, and 4 defenders have been lost, meaning that there's only 8 in total. The Marine units, so that number is based on the ramming factor of, in this case, the Primus battlecruiser. The ramming factor divided by 20. So one of the things you will notice is if you start destroying sections, outer sections of a ship, that would reduce its ramming factor because it's got much less hull. It will also reduce the number of Marine units it has to defend itself. So an effective strategy could be to, severely damage a ship before sending Marines in to just sort of capture / disable it for the rest of the scenario. And obviously in campaign battles that could be relevant because that means you could actually in a subsequent battle have that ship that you'd captured. But in terms of like pickup games, you unfortunately will not seize control of the vessel and be able to fire on its allies, and indeed you couldn't do that in tabletop either, with the lore behind that being that the last thing the crew does is basically lock down all ship systems and weapons just to prevent exactly that. So that's what we're playing for. What I'm going to do is just kind of run through this until the end point, and then I'll just show you a replay of what happens when the Marines eventually wear down the defenders and disable the ship, just to show that to you. So back in a second. And we're back. So the Primus held out for a couple more turns, and at the end of turn 4, which I'm just going to play here, we can see that the Narn Marines eventually overpower the Centauri defenders. And a couple of things happen here. So they had 3 defenders left at the start of this critical phase, and we can see that 1, 2, 3. So the Narns were really firing on all cylinders this time, and they quite quickly overpower the last of the defenders. And at this point, you'll get the message: attacking Marines have overcome the defenders and disabled the ship for the rest of the scenario. The rest of the Marines, and there are 5 attempting to capture the ship still there. So the 2 remaining, they don't roll anymore. There's no point. So just to save cluttering up the combat log, you won't get those messages. And equally, if there was still Marines aboard sabotaging the vessel or systems on that vessel, you would not get any more messages in the combat log about them, because again, it's just not relevant anymore, really. The exception being rescue missions, which I'm going to cover in a second, but you will get a message in the combat log, because it would be possible to do a rescue mission after you've captured a ship. In fact, it might make sense, but all that message will just be for flavor text, and it will just say the rescue mission was successful on account of the fact that you have captured the ship already. So That is how you would capture and disable ships. It took, I think, 3 turns in total for 8 Marines to wear down a Primus. They're elite, and that does count for quite a lot. It's 10% on both rolls. But still, it can be an effective tactic, albeit not perhaps the quickest one. So one to watch out for and one to guard your own ships against, I suppose. Alright, so I'm now going to just move on and bring up the last game and quickly go over rescue mission, so bear with me 1 second. And here we are. So what we've got is in the previous turn I boarded some Marines, attached, delivered, we've seen all that before, so I won't go over that again, but this time they're conducting a rescue mission, and we can see that there's 3 Marines were successfully delivered and attempting the mission. Now the first thing to say about the rescue mission is it has no effect on combat whatsoever. It's purely for scenarios that you want to play out, and essentially this means that the enemy ship won't be affected in any way, but what you will get is the Fiery Void will roll to deliver the Marines, but will also roll to see whether they complete the mission or not, and then that will hopefully inform your scenario, and you can decide what to do next thereafter. So I'll just commit firing orders, and we'll see the sort of type of messages that we get. But essentially, having made the systems to do the sabotage and capture missions, it just felt like this might be a useful thing for players to also have in their game. So there we see the usual updates. Okay, Marine unit completes the rescue mission, but they take heavy casualties. Again, that could be relevant. Marine unit is eliminated, so 2 were eliminated, but one of them completed the rescue mission. And in which case, they will then, if we go to turn 3, you see the 2 that are eliminated, they are obviously no longer on the ship, but the one that completes the rescue mission, we also remove that as well from the CNC, and that's simply, again, to avoid cluttering up the combat log. There was nothing else for them to do in that sense. And I also I chose Minbari and Earth Alliance here just to avoid any criticisms that I'm somehow biased against Centauri. In this case, I certainly am not, but I do seem to sort of keep picking that classic matchup. Okay, so that's the end of the video. Thanks for listening if you made it all the way through. I hope anyone who is going to pick up the sort of breaching pods and try the style of play will enjoy it. It was quite a large project for myself, and I'm reasonably pleased with how it's worked out. So hopefully you will be too. Thanks. See you later.